The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Maryam. Also joining the studio is Sonia. And also today we have a special guest, Rehan, all the way from the Netherlands. So today's topic we will be discussing activism and community engagement in Muslims. It's a topic very close to my heart, as you all know. That is something that I always talk about on the show, and it's something that we think should be discussed on a larger level. Also, we have Rehan, who I will be introducing now. So Rehan is the Vice President of MSA Netherlands, which is the Muslim Student Association. It represents 15 Dutch Muslim student associations and has over 10,000 members. They seek to represent these voices on a national level. So for those who are familiar with VOCIS, it's similar in concept. It's an umbrella organization. And recently, Rehan has organized a project called Spark the Talk, which was a project that brought together policymakers from the government, education and corporate world to gather Muslim students' insight on diversity and inclusion policies. So a lot of experience we have with us today, and we're looking forward to have the show. But before we even delve into that, what is our show about, Sonia?
Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So our show is a platform for girls to voice their own opinions on current affairs and form discussions on a variety of topics such as identity, education, community and social media. Please note that all opinions and views are our own, and we respect all other opposing/similar views and opinions.
Yep. So just to reinforce, all opinions and views are our own, and we respect all other opposing views. If you do want to join the discussion, you can call us on 01582 481822, or you can WhatsApp us at 07779 481822, or you can message us on Facebook Live, where we are streaming live on Facebook, or you can message us on Sister Speak on Instagram. So the next segment of the show is Thought of the Week, which is I'm quite excited to have today because we have a special guest. So Thought of the Week is a segment where we talk about something that's insightful, something that's happened to us, or something generally been thinking about. So I'm first going to go to Sonia, since
I knew you were going to do that.
Since she's my first one in the queue.
So I had one and I've lost it. It was a quote, so it wasn't my thought of the week. It was a quote that I wanted to discuss further, but I can't find it now.
Alright, then we'll go to Rehan.
Go to me. First of all, thank you very much, Maryam, for the introduction. It's lovely to be here and talk about activism. It's also a topic very close to my heart. My thought of the week. I was thinking earlier today, I was feeling a bit tired, and I realized it's because of how much coffee I usually drink during term time, or when school is in term. And I realized, like, okay, whenever I'm on holiday, or for example during Ramadan, it's always a bit you feel tired easier, you feel a bit groggy, and it's really dependence on coffee. So I was wondering, we're addicted to coffee.
Not where.
Just me.
Actually, I'll second that. I'm quite addicted to
really,
coffee.
guys, this is not good. So is the thought of the week that you're reflecting that you're addicted, or that we shouldn't be?
Well, it was more self-reflection that there is a certain level of coffee dependence.
And you're the same, Maryam.
Yeah, but that's not my thought of the week for sure.
Oh no.
But I do crave coffee a lot. And I'm really glad though in university that I never had this dependency on coffee, because I think I would have become very poor and I would have wasted my money on coffee. Very poor financial decisions, which we don't like.
Can strongly relate to that.
Yes.
You guys.
So alhamdulillah, got through university. I used to drink a lot of water. I used to be known for the girl with the water bottle. Yeah, we all got water bottles. We all endorse.
Maybe because it's like 35 degrees outside as well.
So just a quick one. Make sure you wear SPF, guys, because it's 35 degrees.
And stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated as well.
But on that coffee addiction thing, you guys, both of you, need to come off it. You have to. You can't be addicted to coffee. How do you fast during Ramadan? Like, do you not have that craving for coffee?
Yes.
And how does that go for you?
It's jihad.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
But I think for me, I'm not as addicted as most people. Like, I can go days without it, but if I'm really craving it, I have to have it that day. So I have like periods when I'm like, I really need to have the coffee, but then it's just quite inconsistent. But Sonia, have you found your quote?
No, I haven't, but my thought of the week is going to be something else, like light-hearted, and I think we speak about this a lot on the show, you didn't realise. It was basically about a woman, and I don't know how old she was, like 30-ish something, and she was just saying how she's exploring activities now that she couldn't do when she was younger but wanted to do. So that might be for financial reasons, it might be opportunities, like for example one of them was horse riding, and she was like, it's not something I want to pursue, not a career, nothing, but she just wanted to try it, and it's something she couldn't do when she was young because it's not easily accessible to go on a horse depending where you live. So she gave horse riding, pottery classes, dancing, I think, I don't know, all these variety of things, and it just made me realise that, you know, when we're young and you go to a shop and you say to your parent like, oh, I want to buy that massive paint set or something, and you can't because your parents are like, you're not buying that, it's £50, it's a waste of money, whatever, you're not going to paint or whatever. Now we kind of have semi-freedom to do that. I mean, don't waste your money, but if you want to experience something that you never got to as a child, now's your chance, right? So it gave me that insight where I was like, I kind of want to do things that I never got the chance to do when I was younger or wasn't allowed to do, like buy a paint set for £50 and just explore it. So yeah, that's to all of you guys as well. If you have any examples you can think of.
Yeah, I think for me is not necessarily with my childhood, but it's just really pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I think it's something that I discuss quite often on the show. But to a management extent, I think if you put yourself too much in the deep end, it's not really conducive for your development because you are unable to kind of navigate through that zone that is really difficult for you. So I think for me now is just kind of having introspection and kind of ascertaining, okay, what will work for me and what will actually challenge me to some extent, but at least it will elicit some sort of development. So I think that's kind of the process I'm kind of in right now. But Rehan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think just to second what you just said about trying to explore or leave your comfort zone, I think it's also a topic we'll come back to during our discussion on activism itself. I think it's really important to really experience, to learn yourself, really to understand what you want to do, what your likes and hobbies are. You really need to step outside of your comfort zone and find what suits you.
Definitely. I think we will actually touch upon that throughout the show, so I think that's a good segue for the beginning of the show. So this topic this week is activism, and like Rehan mentioned, this topic is very close to us, seeing as we are both quite involved in activism, and especially in the context that we're in Europe and in the UK. It's really important that we have this discussion and to encourage people as well to become engaging within the community. So the first question is, what is activism? And I'm going to go to Sonia actually first.
Great, thank you for that. I think activism in a general sort of way is when you organise and try to plan and showcase things that you feel strongly about. It could be anything. Most of the time it's like educational or political, and you're kind of trying to push it there, you feel strongly about it, so you're trying to maybe protest or make a stand, put your point across and so on. But yeah, that's like a general kind of term of what activism means to me.
I agree. So speaking on that, to create change, the next question is, what does activism look like in the Muslim community in the UK and Europe? In your case, because you're the Vice President of MSA, how does that look like?
All right, so activism, first to come back to your first question about what is activism, I think you can define it very broadly, as Sonia just mentioned, as active participation to try to affect social or political change. That could be trying to change a mindset within a community or to accomplish social or political change. Often when people think of activism, they think of someone with a placard at a protest. That is a form of activism, for sure, but there are also many other forms, such as online activism, campaigns, social media campaigns, for instance. So the situation we're in Europe and the UK when it comes to activism, I think we need to zoom in a bit specifically into the UK for our local context. There are a lot of organizations here which are well established within the Muslim community. There are mosques and also Muslim politicians who are involved, active with the community. And every country within Europe has their own local context as well. Some have it quite well off, for example, in Scandinavian countries. But you don't have to look too far, for instance, to France to see that everyone has very different aims when it comes to activism. So in the UK, we're lucky. We shouldn't take that for granted, that we have this level of existing community support. There are institutions which are here. There are mosques which have been quite established for a long time. So activism can take very different forms depending on where exactly you are.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually see a sister speaker in a way a form of activism, because we're voicing opinions on things that pertain us, and usually voicing things that we're in places that we're underrepresented. So, Sonia, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that a few years ago, especially, now we've got podcasts and things like that, but a while ago we didn't really have these things, and especially, like you said, here, literally Luton, Inspire FM. I know I joined Sister Speak because I found it amazing. I was like, wow, girls talking on a radio show, like it just wasn't an opportunity that I kind of came across every day, so it's definitely stood out. And in a way it is a form of activism, because so many times we've spoken about things that we feel strongly about, and we're able to like make a stand and say our message through radio. So definitely Sister Speak could be a form of activism. Yeah,
absolutely. And both of you touched upon activism, but in a broader sense. But zooming it a little bit in, what impact has it directly had on you, Rehan?
What impact has it had on me specifically? So I think you introduced me briefly as Vice President of MSA. That's a role I started not too long ago. It was actually in December, so the beginning of the calendar year. And I really decided to get into it after attending an event, the European Youth event, where we met different Muslim youth who are active in their own countries, active within local organizations, within student and youth organizations. And it really pushed me to go from being involved at a local level to a bit more nationally, and the impact it's had on me in terms of personal growth, being able to develop my own political opinions and being more involved with different communities. I think it's quite profound. Also in terms of having a wider network, I know that I can go to most European countries, for instance, now, and I'll have people who are like-minded or have a similar way of thinking who I can reach out to and meet up, exchange ideas, best practices, discuss what their challenges are, and learn from each other.
Speaking of exchanging ideas, you recently went to the consultation session with FEMISO. Do you want to just touch upon that? For those who don't know, FEMISO is again a similar organisation to MSA. It's an umbrella organisation that look after its member organisations throughout Europe. And recently they had a consultation session with these member organisations where they essentially exchanged ideas, shared best practice. And because Rehan is the Vice President of MSA, he was invited there. So do you want to share your experience on that?
I wouldn't say invited, but more applied to mention that I'm going to be attending. It was a very interesting experience. It was nice to be in Brussels, the heart of the European Union, which we are no longer a member of here in the United Kingdom.
Don't get started on that.
But, it was a very interesting experience to share best practices with other member organizations, with different local organizations which work in different countries, what challenges they face, and also how they were able to tackle those challenges, because often you see it's almost like a magic mirror which you can see into the future, where an organization in another country has faced similar problems that you might face or which you're on track to facing in the future, and you can see how they've tackled them or what the consequences are, and it can really teach you what you need to do in order to prepare your organization to be sustainable, to be able to work in the long term. So it was a really useful, beneficial consultation session.
Speaking of challenges, as you just mentioned, and it's really good that you're able to go and meet these other organizations, member organizations, who kind of forecast kind of the problems that they encounter. What challenges have you specifically faced in Netherlands pertaining your role?
So particular issues which we faced, what would those be? I think an issue which all volunteer organizations face is recruitment, being able to reach out to people who have capabilities, who have talent, but just ensuring that they're aware of the opportunities and possibilities that they have. I think that's a very general challenge that all volunteer associations face. So that was something which we had this year at the beginning. We were a small team. I think our board before I joined was just 3 people. So for a national organization, that's quite a lot of work.
That's us here now. I was literally just saying how you
people.
That's us at Sister Speak. I'm sure there's people that want to join, but getting the word out there for the like-minded people that want this opportunity is difficult. So I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, sorry, can you carry on? You're saying
no, that was
issues. Oh, is that the only issue you had?
I think that was the main issue we faced. There were also others, but I think it's not too important to delve into them.
How are you able to kind of overcome it?
So in terms of recruitment specifically, we try to have campaigns, we try to be active at our events. When we have physical events, a lot of people were very excited to attend our physical events because, after a year, 2 years of being locked away and just attending online things, we were able to reach a lot of new people who attended events and then just spread awareness of, okay, look, this is what we do. If you're interested in also organizing this or helping make sure this continues, you want to give your contribution, feel free to join. And that was it worked really well, just going physically to all of these events, meeting people, speaking to them one-on-one. I think that did quite the boost for...
That's good advice for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon, because what you mentioned is about the lack of resources and the lack of recruitment, so in terms of, human resources, really. How do you think this translates to when you're in a context where a lot of people think that if you engage yourself in activism, it's going to hinder you from opportunities, i.e. in professionalism? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think it's really important to sort of normalize and legitimize the work that you do in these Islamic organizations, that it doesn't have to hinder your job opportunities. For example, if you think of it today, it perhaps stems from, in my opinion, it perhaps stems from a sort of older mindset that this is something which could stigmatize you or hinder your career because you're attracting too much attention to yourself. But if you think of it in a modern context, if you look at a lot of corporations, it's almost strange if you say, for example, Deloitte or McKinsey isn't organizing an iftar in Ramadan. You kind of think like, okay, that's a bit strange, they didn't do it this time. So we really need to do our best to make the most out of this opportunity where we have that we can be involved. So for instance, for our organization, for MSA the Netherlands, we're not just a network of Muslim students, we also pride ourselves in being an Islamic organization which takes its foundations from Islamic principles, and we work together with different corporate entities, we work together with the Dutch government, with different ministries, and that really legitimizes the work that we do, in a sense that to our Muslim community, like, oh, we can be part of an Islamic organization and still work together with the government, work together with all these different ministries who are collaborating with this organization.
Yeah, I really like that. It's not like a separate thing, it can just be inclusive. Like, I can practice my religion and be strong in my faith and loud and proud about it and still do these official government jobs and liaising with professionals and so on. So yeah, that's really cool.
I think for me as well, that one of the benefits has been the transferable skills, because as Rehan mentioned, when you have job interviews, they ask you about your event management skills, your communication skills, and almost every interview I talk about, I do a radio show, and that's something that's very niche. Not many people can say that they're on a radio show, and even in terms of FEMISO as well, to have that broad network, to be able to communicate to such diverse stakeholders is something that's really looked really positively at. And I think for me personally, again, just in terms of personal development, it has been a very good thing for my confidence. And I think that's something that we need as well in the Muslim community, just to raise that awareness that you can be involved in Islamic organizations and it won't hinder your opportunities, but more so this is actually a two-way street. You can develop your skills. That's something that most Islamic organizations want from you. They want to develop you, because if you think about Islamic history as well, we were pioneers in many fields, yet today we're very I would say we're quite one-dimensional. We tend to go for specific careers just because it's more conventional and it's more stable. But we're not willing to kind of branch out. And that's something that I always say, that we need to infiltrate all kind of sectors. But also, I think holding on that point is that we need to also value our religion and hold steadfast on our principle, because there will be times when people are going to challenge your principles, but at that point you have to realize, well, what is your actual objective? What do you want to gain out of this? So yeah, thank you, Rehan, for kind of sharing that. You mentioned that you liaise with MPs and different industries. I think one of the things that you mentioned, I did mention in the first part of the show, is the Spark the Talk. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's really interesting. I think everyone would want to hear exactly the kind of thought process behind it, the things that you did in that event, and kind of the outcome as well.
All right. Well, thank you. First of all, you said I organized it, but no person works alone. This was the hard work of our advocacy and communications team in organizing this event. But Spark the Talk, it's a long duration project that we have going, with one of the key events being a dinner session we organized with Muslim students to try to bring them together with policymakers from Dutch ministries, universities and the corporate world, essentially government education and private sector, to really get their input on policies that affect them in terms of diversity and inclusion in the workspace, in education, in the government, because often this group is the target of a lot of D&I diversity policies, but they're not really consulted on what their input is. So we found it really interesting to see that a lot of issues which Muslim students faced, these corporate or these policymakers had no idea that, okay, for instance, prayer spaces is something which we had no idea there was so much demand for within our institutions. So that's what we really tried to do, to try to bring these people together, so there's an exchange of ideas, so that everyone is aware of what challenges there actually are in society, so that can be better reflected in policy making.
To a question to Lamisa and Sonia, from the UK context, do you think that this structure, it kind of exists in the UK, or have you actually experienced something directly like that? Or do you think UK structures are more separate entities and we don't really reach out to various stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it's quite, because you said you liaise with like Dutch MPs and all that type of stuff. I think it's interesting because we don't take the onus on ourselves, I guess, and it's great to take an example from people like yourself. The fact that we can actually, I guess we could very easily write a letter to our MP and discuss these things and actually make changes, because I guess at the end of the day, if we're not the ones telling them, how are they going to know, I guess? It is up to us to kind of let them know that this is exactly what we need and exactly what we want, and it'd be great if we could work with you. So yeah, I think it's quite enlightening.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Lamisa, but I don't think, I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf, and then there's a group out there in the UK that are like, we're doing all of this stuff, you just don't know about it.
Sure.
But personally, I've not really come across it. I think we're very, there's groups I know, I'm thinking about when I went to university in London, loads of different groups, but I don't see the cohesion. It's like, if you all work together and make like one big group instead, maybe there could be that, like, communication with like officials and professionals and so on, but it's a bit like, I don't know what the word is, like all over the place.
Yeah,
but
I think that's what it is, because it's fragmented. It's difficult, and the fact that I'm quite involved in this kind of community, and I'm only starting to find out only in the last year or so, and I've been trying to seek out these kind of opportunities. So I think there's a lack of presence in the UK, specifically in the Islamic organization arena. And what do you think, Lamisa and Sonia, this is?
Why do you think this is?
I don't know if it's maybe because we like you said, it's the skills that we need, right, to build.
Sure.
The fact that people haven't had opportunities, I guess, growing up, can also mean that they're not as confident to go out and get what we need. Do you see what I mean? We're not in those spheres, or people like us haven't had that type of training. A lot of people you'll meet from Muslim backgrounds who are quite quiet and quite reserved.
Sure.
I feel like they haven't had the opportunities to be able to express themselves and make
Yeah.
and the opportunities just aren't available.
Just got a couple of seconds, Gonzalo.
I don't really have anything to add.
Yeah, I think what rounds it up is that I think the UK context is a lot of times culture is misconstrued with religion, and that's when Muslims find this this challenge where they're trying to practice their religion, but they kind of bog down with culture, and it's just about how do we differentiate that, and how do we kind of campaign for our religious beliefs without culture kind of overshadowing it. But it was a really insightful discussion. Thank you, Rehan, Lamisa and Sonia. We will be continuing this conversation on activism in the next half. We are coming to the end of the show. It was really good to speak about this, and inshallah see you in the next half. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Ya hala, ya hala, ya hala, ya hala.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Maryam, Lamisa Sonia and Rehan. In the first half we were talking about activism and community engagement as Muslims, and we'll be continuing the conversation. Just before we actually start the show though, I do want to promote Sister Speak is recruiting. So we're recruiting for new presenters, new podcast presenters, and also if you are interested in other roles, for example being a media officer, research officer, we have those roles open too. If you do want to get in contact, please email us at sisterspeak@inspirefm.org. As we've kind of mentioned before in the previous show, it has really dramatically changed my way of communicating. It's really good for your communication skills, and as we've had a couple of sessions with people from sixth form, meeting sixth form, it's really important to put that in your personal statement, so we really do urge you to join Sister Speak. Back to the show. So as I mentioned, we were talking about activism and community engagement. So the next half I want to ask Rehan, as we were talking about there's a lack of presence, especially in the UK context. Do you think that's because of Muslims being not unaware, but in terms of, what's that word? We were talking about it.
A sense of apathy.
Apathy, that's it. Yeah, so they have a sense of apathy towards the organisation, just because, as we said, because there's actually a huge quantity of this Islamic organisation, they just don't feel the need to actually actively get involved. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's definitely a strong element in why people don't seek, in my opinion, why people don't seek out these opportunities, because to be honest, when you compare it, the situation in the UK to Europe as a whole, we do have it quite well off in terms of we have established organizations, we do have a lot of, I think every university has an ISOC, which is almost every university. Things like that, you don't have to worry too much about halal food or a Muslim graveyard, for instance, whereas these are like real challenges which a lot of communities in Europe have to think about. So I think a lot of people just take it for granted. When you think of it, a lot of us are from a migration background. We think of the challenges, for instance, our grandparents or parents had to face when coming here, but yet despite all the challenges, perhaps like difficulty with English language or in a lower paying job, moving to a brand new country where you can't FaceTime back home every day, they were still able to establish mosques, they were able to establish schools, Islamic graveyards, halal food, and pass on their religion, their faith to the next generation. And this is, I see it as a sort of a trust and a manner that we have to take care of, because we can't take it for granted. You don't have to look too far. For instance, we mentioned at the beginning, just look at the situation in France where mosques are being shut down, where preachers are being jailed. And this is something where we really have to think about, okay, how do we take care of this? How do we be involved in ensuring the longevity of these organizations? What can we do for this? So I think it's a sense of apathy and taking things for granted in our situation, assuming they won't get worse.
Sonia, Lamisa, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that when it's like everything you said I knew, but the way you just phrased it has just made me think you're so right. Like our parents, we can give for example, did come to this country. Mine came in like the 70s or 60s or whatever, and when you really think about it, they were in a country that was not the way it is now. There wasn't Muslim things nearby, there wasn't mosques in every other street corner, halal meat. I just really thought about that. Like it's so easily accessible for us and we don't even think twice. You think I'll just go there to get it, but it's like, hold on a minute, that shop was never there, they had to fight for it, they had to get that. Maybe it was even an Islamophobic, I mean we can go into that a bit more, but you know, more racism and all of these challenges they had to face. And they didn't have, like we have mobile phones easily, internet easy, you know, they didn't even have those communications, but they still managed to do all of that. And it almost feels like we're doing the easy part now, which is like you said, just maintaining it. Obviously there are still more challenges like you mentioned in Europe, but for us in the UK, we need to do better, I think. Just blew my mind. I was like, what am I doing?
I agree with him as well, because it is Aman. At the end of the day, that this is the legacy that we're going to have to put forward. And you know, as Muslims, all we'll ever think about is how we introduce Allah. And if we're not taking care of the things, especially the structures that are being put in place for the sake of Him, then we're doing a disservice. And I think, you know, one of the questions I want to now pose to you guys is that why do you think there's a resistance to be engage yourself in these organisations in the UK? Or
I think that there has to be a point where you need to rethink your intention with a lot of these groups. Because we are quite lucky that we have so many, I feel like sometimes there can be opportunity for things to change, so people's intentions to change, or for example outsiders not being let in, that type of thing. It seems a bit cliquey at times, if I'm talking like completely honestly. I think in the beginning when I first started going to uni as well, I felt like I couldn't join because I felt like it was very closed off. And I think that's when we need to start thinking, okay, we have this base, we have loads and loads of like, you know, groups, and we have a really good foundation, but where can we go from here in terms of renewing our intention on what we want these groups to be, and you know, what we want to get out of this whole thing.
Definitely. Rehan, do you want to add?
No, I think that's a really important point, which if I could summarize as making sure organizations are more inclusive within the Muslim community itself, so not just to one single ethnic group, not just to one. I'm surprised when I still see mosques in the UK which don't have prayer spaces for women. That's
we've
quite
spoken about that. Maryam's really strong on that too. We all are.
So I think it is a really important point to make sure these organizations are accessible to everyone within the Muslim community, that they also engage with wider society as a whole. So as a quick example from one of our member organizations, they organized during one of the first corona lockdowns, they organized a session where their members went to old care homes and helped the staff who were under immense pressure at the time. And then after that, I think they even got non-Muslim volunteers helping out within their ISOC. So that was something I thought was really, really well done as wider community participation.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I was going to say, do you feel like, because you're obviously using the rest of Europe as an example, that you have more challenges? Like you said, you might even have a Muslim graveyard nearby. These are the things that you guys are trying to make a stand for, fight for and change. And whereas we, especially if we're talking about Luton, everything's there. Like we don't have to think about anything, that we take it for granted, which is why we just take a back seat and we just kind of let it. Whereas you guys only have each other and you kind of like try to do the right thing, try to do what's best, that you hold on to each other. Whereas we, that's what you were saying, Lamisa, have these like cliques, and it's like it's already formed.
If it's already there and I'm like, oh, they're not really letting me in, then I don't really need to do anything. I feel like it's that kind of attitude.
Which it shouldn't be.
Which it shouldn't be, of course not.
Yeah, I think that level of being complacent is because of that, and I had a similar experience at university. I felt that I couldn't resonate with the people in the Islamic society, and a lot of the things is because that they think that they deserve to be in these certain positions and everyone else's opinions is not counted. And unfortunately, this is kind of the case not just exclusively for my university and Lamisa's, it's quite widespread. And then that deters people from engaging completely, because they just don't feel included in their own community. So why would they engage? Why would they lobby for anything? But talking about these challenges, what do you think we can suggest in terms of overcoming those barriers, even from a personal level? How do we take that step forward, Rehan?
So to overcome these challenges, I think first of all a very easy thing to implement is just more checks and balances in terms of how inclusive and how for example, in these organizations, how leadership is elected, so that the voices of people who want to participate are actually heard. That way you can build a more cohesive and inclusive strategy for what your organization actually stands for, who it's aiming to serve, and ensure that the voices of who you're trying to serve are implemented into that. So I think essentially drawing up all the opinions of the local community or people you try to serve.
No, that's a really good point. I want you to talk about a little bit about general assemblies and consultation sessions, because before I joined FEMISOL and even experienced the member organisation from the European perspective, that was quite new to me. So do you want to just talk about that, and how has that benefited you in terms of MSA?
So you mean how the consultations and general assemblies help us?
Yeah.
I think, first of all, I mentioned just now checks and balances. So the general assemblies are a surefire way to make sure that we're on track, because the people who we're supposed to be accountable to, so our members, they have the opportunity to essentially grill us on everything they think we're not doing right. They can audit our finances, make sure like money's not going where it shouldn't be, or that it's being spent wisely, but also just our strategic goals, what they think we're doing, what we're doing right, where we need to improve upon. So I think it's important to have those formal consultations with your members to gain their insights.
I don't think that exists
I
within
don't think so.
Islamic society practices, and I think it blew my mind when I encountered this, because surely if you're being held accountable from your members, that's the only way you will actually have an organisation that represents that community. But talking about community, one kind of space that I want to talk about is the masjid, because I really strongly feel that this is the community space that we're not really tapping into. So I just want to gain your kind of insight. What kind of inclusive strategies or structures can masjids adopt to create spaces where Muslims can engage with activism?
So I think one way for sure would be to make sure that different voices are listened to within the community. Make sure that the mosque is active within wider society as a whole. So not just serving only the people who attend, but also the wider community. So engaging with non-Muslim groups, non-Muslim charities, people who live within the direct vicinity of the mosques, that people who are attending aren't being a nuisance at night. For example, in the summer when Isha is really late, you see that a lot of people, non-Muslims who live around mosques, often have complaints that people are coming in really late. This is becoming a bit of an issue. So I think we just need to be a bit more accepting of the fact that we need to work with all different groups, all different stakeholders around us.
Definitely. From the female perspective, Sonia and Lamisa, what do you think?
I would agree. I think engagement with the wider community is a big thing, and getting, for example, mosques doing efforts like cleaning up in the local area or taking them to local care homes to volunteer. These types of things are good because they learn about their community, they learn about kind of what's going on. They can see real social issues happening, and then that will help them to kind of think about these things and actually be like, okay, maybe I can do something about this. I feel like if you're not exposed to the issues, you're not going to know that they exist, and therefore you're not going to work to solve them. So I feel like, what you said is completely right.
I mean, both of them hit the nail on the head, and it's like making a presence in the community is so important. But like, I see sometimes little improvements. So you can have like kids classes when they learn like Quran in the mosque and so on, and sometimes I saw it somewhere, they had like a mini graduation. That's so cute and nice, but also that's very like, it encourages more people to go. It's like, wow, they run events, and so like it just gives that kind of standing, and you're like, they've actively tried to be involved, and then you want to be involved back as well. But there's just so much, I feel like there's so much that can be done, so much awareness, inclusivity with the females, with the children, but just even like you mentioned as well, helping the community out, taking into consideration what the neighbours are saying, the locals are saying. I think we could do another radio show on that, just like what the mosques can do. I think we should do it again. And we need to really help the mosques out. And
do you feel that there's a lack of representation of women in committees in masjids, and what kind of implication does that have?
I mean, for what I've seen, it's usually like one of the imam's wives that usually are in charge of the lady section of the mosque, which is absolutely fine. I mean, who else is going to do it? She's already there, probably she knows about it. That's fine, that's good. But sometimes the word just doesn't get out. So like I think I mentioned during Ramadan as well, like I didn't know there was a female section at a mosque that was local to me, because there wasn't one, and then suddenly there was one after like years and years. But how was I supposed to know? Obviously word of mouth travels, but yeah, there needs to be an outreach and so on. Like there needs to be, the message needs to be spread across, and I don't know how, but there definitely needs to be more done, not just for females as well, but I think for children too in the mosque. They should know it as a place to go, as a place that they can grow, just so many things, and they shouldn't be like afraid to go in there. You know, they should be able to go in there for advice, to learn, just so many things I think that the mosque can do for inclusivity.
I think these opinions need to be valued as well. That's an important thing, because it's all well and good saying we have women on the committee, but if you're not going to listen to what they have to say, then what is it really doing?
Yes.
So I think value needs to be given to their opinions, and they need to be accepted as equal members of the committee as well. And that's one way you can actually move forward.
Definitely. And I feel like even, you know, if I were to go to a masjid, would I to give my opinion, where would it go? I wouldn't even know where the feedback loop is, and I think that's something that's really, it's such a shame actually, because there's just so much potential in this community space, especially in the context of the UK. We have so many masjids, we have potentially so many community centres, but unfortunately they just, again, they're very staggered, they're not very connected. And another thing, that a problem that I have spoken about previously as well, that we attribute certain ethnicities to masjids.
Yeah.
And I think that again creates this fragmented approach, because you don't feel like you want to go to another mosque that doesn't represent your ethnicity, or you just don't feel like you resonate with them. So that's just another issue. But moving on, if we talked about community spaces, but I want to kind of go back to activism. So if someone wants to get involved towards creating positive impact, what would you suggest, Rehan?
Okay, the first thing I would suggest would probably be to do your research about what organizations exist within your local area, within your university, for instance, or places where you frequent. Where are avenues where you could make a positive contribution within your within your community? And it doesn't just have to be specifically Islamic organizations. It could also be for any cause or campaign you think is very valuable, whether it's climate justice or any other form of environmental justice. There are plenty of options available, so you just need to do your research, find out where you can best put your energy and your campaigning efforts, essentially.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you don't find that specific niche, then be pioneers, create that space for other people. But I wanted to actually hit upon as well that there is a lack of presence, but do you think social media is a underused tool, especially in masjids, to engage with the young community?
Sonia, she's looking at me because this is like kind of my job role and so on media. I'm all about media. I think there's a fine line, because there's in some ways I can actually understand why a mosque might say, I don't want to be on a social media platform. I can actually understand that. I do see it, because there's so much, and it's like I don't want to be associated with that. Fair enough. But at the same time, to the accessibility, if there's a teenager that needs to know the opening times of a mosque and they can't see it, and they're used to using a social media platform, what are they going to do? What are they going to go on? They don't know the phone number, they don't know the committee leader. So it's such a, I don't know how to answer that question, because there's like a balance there, because I actually see where they're coming from if they don't want to be on Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So
I don't take it that far.
I don't know.
Do you think it's because there's not different ideas in these committees? So if you had, for example, if you were in a committee, masjid committee, and you are aware of how to kind of navigate social media, do you think that would be received?
I see that's a better point, because for example, I'll use my dad, because I can use my dad. He was part of a mosque committee somewhere, I think he is still, but if they said to him now, post something on social media, I'd do it. He would not know how to, he would not know how to engage with people and so on. But I see what you're saying, but on the back of that as well, if you have these connections that young people, web developers, app developers, you could create your own app for the mosque. That would be the best thing, because it's your platform. You can do whatever you want on it, and someone in the mosque would be in charge of it. No one else can, comment or anything like that. Those are the type of connections we need to make. And I don't know, obviously, but I'm sure there's people out there that would do that. I'm not saying for free, but out of I'm part of the mosque, I want to do this for the mosque. So that's the kind of connections they need to be making. But that's the thing. There's no outreach. There's no one's doing anything. They're just kind of just leaving it as it is. I think that's what the issue is.
It's like widening the members that they have on the committee.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking most mosque committees are comprised of
men.
Old men. Yeah, the older part.
We're not ageist,
we're not ageist, but the higher end of the age group. And I feel like if they were to include more young people, that would kind of bring in those ideas, and you'd be able to work out a way forward from that.
Because the mosque is for everyone, so the committee should be comprising of everyone.
Do you think there's a resistance between a generation above us and our generation being involved in committees because of different opinions on things that conflict with how they want to see the masjid running, as opposed to how this generation feels that it should be running?
Yeah, I feel like the resistance is kind of coming down a bit. I feel like there is some progression in certain areas, but on the whole, there is going to be that resistance, because I feel like there's an idea that they believe that they know better. And if you do think like that, then I feel like you're going to stop yourself from evolving, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm not generalising, but I feel like if that is the way people do think, then we need to move away from that. That's what I would say.
What's your perspective on that, Rehan?
No, I think there's definitely some aspect of you need to evolve with the times, and because at some point you do have to reflect, like, okay, if for instance we're doing our bayans or our lectures in a certain language, but the people who are attending no longer understand that language, you have to really reflect on, okay, who are we serving here? Are we really putting in all of this effort for maybe 5 out of the 200, just as an example, people who do understand? So we just need to, I think our mosques need to really reflect and sort of evaluate and evolve towards making sure that they still have attendance, making sure that people still feel welcome, making sure that people still feel that they can go to the mosque as a place to learn, as a place to understand and consult with.
It's collaboration more than anything, I think. Collaboration with them and collaboration between us would help to serve the whole community.
I think so as well. I think when you collaborate in hindsight, if we did do all of these things, I think masjids would be a very good way to educate not only just our generation, but actually we get educated, because we actually don't realise how much wisdom that generation above us has. They actually navigated through a country when they didn't even have the language, and they have so much hikmah in them that we can actually take forward, and I think it's the same thing. We kind of think, okay, we know better. It's literally the same thing. We're on the front line. We're in professional fields. We're interacting with different stakeholders. So we think that we know how to actually run these. But then if you think about their years of expertise and their long-standing way of organising masjids, they actually know what they're doing as well. So I think it is that you need to have that collaboration, because both kind of perspectives are very important and equal, but it's just that I think both kind of elements are very resistant to talk to each other, and I think dialogue can solve a lot of problems. So inshallah, we should try to intend to try to get involved and hopefully see some sort of impact. And I think one thing, we did a show with Abdul Rahman and the Pillars app guy, and he even said that when he was going to masjids, there was a bit of resistance because they wanted to include.
Sorry, continue. She started giggling.
They wanted to include prayer times, but then there was a resistance for that, which is actually really strange, because surely that serves the purpose of the masjid, that to bring people to prayer, to call people to prayers,
make it more accessible.
To make it more accessible. But also one thing that he kind of mentioned as well is the resistance for technology, and using technology as a means to be able to create the longevity of masjids. So for example, on Fridays when they collect money, no one's carrying cash anymore, and so therefore how are you going to create a sustainable structure in place to make sure that the masjid is operating? Again, it's that disconnect, because we're not able to kind of explain how to use this technology, and they are on the other side, they're not able to receive that information. So there are these kind of disparity between the two. But going back to the main topic, as we are kind of coming to the end of the show, what would you say that for people that perhaps lack confidence and think activism and community engagement cannot be for them, because firstly they don't feel comfortable speaking to a large crowd of people, or they don't think they can have the ability to be careful of what they say in case they receive a backlash? What would you say about that, Rehan?
I think, like we mentioned in the beginning, activism has many different forms, many different types that it can take place. So if someone is feeling anxious about going in front of a crowd of, 1,000 people and speaking, they have to realize that that's not immediately what's expected of them when someone says activism. I think for people who want to build confidence and become involved, there are always smaller scale things where you can be active on a more personal, like almost one-to-one level, directly with maybe even people you know within your local community, as a very low barrier entry form of activism. And then as you gain more confidence and more experience within that, perhaps branch out into something larger, something more involved or on a larger scale. I think that's a quick and easy step plan.
And Lamisa, what do you think as well?
I would agree. Go to involve yourself in as many movements as you can, and you'll find something that really makes you passionate. And I think from there, when you're around people who you've seen doing activism, you can learn things, you can pick things up, and then you'll feel confident enough to kind of take that stage for yourself, I guess, and express yourself in a way that you feel comfortable. So
Same as Louisa.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that, shadow someone who's doing what you want to do, and then see how it goes. But also, if you're really passionate about something, you might just feel that spark in you to do it.
Spark the talk.
Spark the talk.
Spark the talk.
Yeah. So I think for me personally, again, I found that struggle with trying to find organizations that represented my kind of principle and values. And the reason why I asked that question is because I was in that situation. I was someone that lacked confidence. I couldn't speak, and now I'm hosting Sister Speak. So that's it. That's positive. I just think it's really important to just take that step forward. But also, one thing we didn't talk about is company. And I think company is very, very important to think about when you're, especially from your young age, to consider, because the people that you are around, they're the people that are going to influence you. And if you want to be an influencer yourself, you have to be around people that are principled, that hold their moral compass strongly. And so what do you guys say about that? Just quickly, Rehan, in 5 seconds.
So could you please, how to find the right company?
Well, how to find the right company?
I think it's important to be around people not only who think in a similar way to you, but also people who have different opinions, so that you can really be challenged on your views and learn how to defend them. And I think that will teach you yourself, how it will give you a broader understanding of why you actually value, why you actually believe in
What you believe in.
what you believe in, essentially.
Definitely. I think I resonate with a lot, especially because I did the degree in English literature, and I was challenged with my beliefs almost every seminar. So it was a really good learning opportunity, and I think that's the main thing. When you are engaged in activism, it is a learning opportunity. It's about building yourself and growing. So that does come to the end of the show, unfortunately. Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.